like to thank the organisers for inviting me and thank Dr. Papayannides. Starting with agri-food, because this is the Agri-Business Forum. Agri-food has to do with human impact on nature. Humans intervene in nature for the processing and consumption of food, for the production, processing and consumption. So according to the report of the Intergovernmental on Climate, 1/3 of the greenhouse effect is deriving from the agribusiness. And based on their report saying that in 2050 we'll have 10 billion as the population of the Earth, you understand what will happen if we do nothing, if this is the policy we pursue. So who's responsible for that? If you ask 10 people in this room, they will say the agricultural policy. And it is worth having a look at the course of the agricultural trackway. How did we start with the CAP? With economic policies. Regulation of the market and of the prices. And then they turned to the market economy, reducing distortions with fewer subsidies per hectare per product. Afterwards, there were commercial trading agreements. So there were these agreements that allowed Greek farmers to gain access to the global markets. And then there were environmental policies to improve environmental performance. So they managed to respond to the global demand for diversified products. Energy policies. There is no policy which is not intervening, which is not somehow affecting the agricultural policy. Saving energy. We all remember when we were kids, when we traveled from Athens to Thessaloniki. There was the plain, and then we remember on the left and on the right, there was irrigation all day long. This goes back to the agricultural policies of our country, and then we reach the last CAP with the Green Deal, where we leave all sorts of support per hectare, per product. There are conditions that need to be met. We speak about the biodiversity, and there is this shift through agri-food, which is used as a main vehicle of the agribusiness. There's the shift because of the global population needs food. So there's this strategy from farm to fork. In Greece, we say to our plate, from the farm to our plate, so from farm to fork. What happens moving on to the just transition? Just transition emanates from the Green Deal, and there's a specific mechanism that says in order for the areas that have high emissions of the greenhouse gas, especially CO2, they need to be diversified. They shouldn't have CO2 emissions that high, they should do something different. In our case, these areas are historically dependent on employment. For 50, 60 years, everyone was satisfied, but the last 10, 12 years, for systemic reasons, CO2 is there. There's the differentiation through the renewable sources of energy, there's the pricing, for greenhouse effects. So CO2 has been there to blame. Many people believe that the Just Transition Plan is a strategy to diversify the model that exist in certain areas due to the Green Deal. Another thing we need to mention is that, same as CAP, Just Transition is there to mobilize all policies together, differentiation of the product, therefore of an area that depends, as I said, on CO2, on carbon. And by saying dependent, we imply that, how shall I put that? There are other factors which also participate in production, but to much lesser extent. So in Kozani, the primary sector is 7, 8, 9%. So we have 5 pillars of development. The first one is energy transformation. I'm not going to further elaborate on that. The processing, trade, sustainable tourism, technology, human resources and education. Many policies at the same time. If we close our eyes and think of all the ministries involved in that, I can assure you it's all the ministries of the country, even the Ministry of Mercantile Marine, because it also covers the areas of the lakes as well. So approximately 19.5 billion euros we get to reduce our footprint. We want the country to go out in the global markets. We want improvement in all the indicators. We want development. But agriculture is not for the urban centres. Apart from the high resources, there's a lot I want to say, but I'm going to try to finish within 10 minutes. So a positive thing I wanted to share with you. This is when we revise, when we review the CAP, and this is the time for the just transition, so we can plan things from scratch without repeating the same mistakes as in the past, therefore allowing for the primary sector to enter 2-digit figures, and so that exports can grow. The exports in Western Macedonia are 380 million. A lot of that depends on synergies, and delignitization could be the starting point of a productive transformation that will substitute, that will replace certain posts of jobs. Because, as I said, these systemic reasons, delignitization for the past 10 years, what happens afterwards? A loss of jobs, and we need to replace these jobs. These jobs need to be sustainable. They need to last so that people can prosper, having a lot of time to organize their lives, etc. Another good thing happening has to do with the lands. A lot of the lands will be freed, will be restored, will be further developed and improved to attract new investments. Even land which has not been improved will get rid of the neighbours that are polluting, and this is also very important. Then we have lots of funds, the EU Recovery Fund, the Just Transition Plan, the NSRF, lots of opportunities of the private sector as well to leverage money. By private sector, I think all of us are thinking about the banks, but if you ask me, I would also think about the capital markets. The capital markets need to invest in products of high added value, which we can see in the primary sector, especially in the agri-food sector, because these areas, having very fertile land, have products of designated origin that are highly demanded in the markets, but we cannot respond to this high demand because the organization is missing. So before I finish, I would like to say that these two policies, the agriculture and the Just Transition Development Plan, cross one another. They act in partnership with one another, and this is an endeavor that is worth a lot, especially for areas in Greece that need to be developed. Let us not forget the industrial heritage of certain areas in our country. We have lots of engineers. People working for the Public Power Corporation would send their children to the National Polytechnic School. So the Just Transition Plan is the commitment of the state to help with this transformation in the best possible way. It's a plan that should be socially just. This is what we want. Thank you very much. I also have a video, 4 minutes. I'll get that for the end, and it will show you the main bullets of my presentation.